Thank you, Paul, for those generous words. Friends, I must start by complimenting both Etisalat, PPI Media Group, and all the wonderful sponsors for not only setting the tone in terms of the theme and what we are about to discuss through the morning, but also in terms of one of the more important elements for any successful business, be it SME or at every level of industry and enterprise, you need to stay connected. Not just get connected, but stay connected right through. In fact, I was, listening to Hazel. She said, discipline sets you free. It's absolutely vital, even though I may be a little indisciplined per se. But I think the discipline that she refers to, and which what the quote refers to, is really organizational discipline. Data, metrics, connectivity, and where you need to be in discipline, and that applies to me, is at the leadership level. You need to think a little bit out of the box. You need to be a little indisciplined, not in terms of indisciplined lifestyle, but in terms of indisciplined thinking, so that you don't confine to what is the conventional, the given, and the already proven propositions. You move beyond that in terms of lateral thinking. And one of the immediate requirements then is to stay connected. And that's where I think we have a huge amount of support from the technology industry, from the telecom industry, in terms of the applications, the software segments around the world. So let me plunge straight into my presentation, and I will be a little indisciplined in terms of talking a little bit out of the presentation. So moving on to the next slide. So Tolstoy, I think it was in Anna Karenina, I'm not sure if it is War and Peace, one of the books said that all happy families resemble one another, and each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And I think to some extent it applies to the world of connectivity. Those that are less connected at whatever level, SME or with global aspirations, those that are less connected are definitely going to be part of the unhappy families that we find. And if you're in a bank or a financial institution, you see a lot of them, we call them for some reason non-performing assets. They're not performing today because they stopped being connected. They were possibly connected to one or two vendors or one or two customers, and the world goes on. So in a sense, as we call in banking, you were not sufficiently de-risked. You had concentration risks, you had a number of other risks that plagued your business, and which is what leads to the so-called NPAs, or non-performing asset syndrome, in banks and other financial institutions. So I think you always need to also realize that organizations have to be organized, which is part of the discipline argument. But organizations are also globally becoming commoditized. By that, what I mean is that even Apple, and as Microsoft learned to its own dismay many years back, that even an innovative approach soon not only produces a number of Me Too's that quickly replicate it and maybe even do it better than the original, but also you have the pressure as the scale goes up, as the competition intensifies, and your margins are practically eaten away, that you find that what was an innovative first mover advantage is very quickly whittled down, and what you have is a commodity. I mean, it may not be commodity in the physical sense of the term, but your business becomes a commodity. It can be done by anybody else, better, bigger, and certainly smarter. And I think that's where the connectivity argument again, what connectivity produces is you're able to constantly benchmark against global best practices. You're able to constantly see who else is doing what in what parts of the world. But ultimately, there is nothing that one does except perhaps thinking that is unique to one individual or one business. Very quickly, these are not just monitored. The successful ones are not just monitored, but they are, their strategies are mirrored, and very quickly you find that you got competition at your doorstep before you realized. And these days, competition at your fingertips, given the extent of electronic and the use of technology makes it practically and very quickly replicable. So SMEs, especially the ones that are aspirational or aspire to be bigger and better, would no longer be just SMEs. They would become mid-sized enterprise, and they would want to be large-sized enterprises for achieving scale, for achieving quality, for investing in people, investing in technology. And this investment in technology is not a one-off activity. You need to constantly do that. I keep mentioning it as an investment and not a cost. And I think that's the correct way to look at this. Clearly, you will have to have your business case for technology investments. You have to make sure that you're able to absorb the technology, you're able to stay connected, and you're not doing it because it looks attractive or sounds attractive to you. There is anecdotal global research, much of it based on empirical data, and that would suggest that SMEs per se succeed best when they stay connected, when they are not just very local or domestic or stay within a very, very small geography in physical terms, but are able to reach out to the rest of the world, be it the region, be it beyond that. Next slide, please. So one of the advantages, and all of us are blessed to be in this generation when technology, digital connectivity is so widely and cheaply available and accessed, that if we miss out the opportunity to upgrade ourselves, I think there is a significant business disadvantage in the process. You're able to now gather market data, technical data, and a whole raft of digital connectivities that makes you smarter than the next SME who is in the same business or service or other activities. Another data that illustrates not just in this region but across the world is that family-owned SMEs don't survive beyond the second generation, and in some instances, not even that, if they're not sufficiently able to A, have the discipline that Hazel spoke about, but B, not sufficiently invested in technology. Tends to be patriarch-driven in some cases, or a few key team members, and then the key men risk or the key women risk end up causing that generation to literally go out of business. So the point that I'm making is, which is what I said earlier, which is view investments as investments in technology, connectivity, and actually not just prepare a clear plan for connectivity, but discuss it with your banks and bankers and financial institutions, because many of them, in their own interest, to preserve the quality of their own lending book or investment book, will want to make sure that you are connected, that you are right on top of your business. If they are smart bankers, if they're not, then you're probably talking to the wrong person in the first instance, or banking with the wrong person. You certainly can't bank upon them. So, similar to capital adequacy, credit control, compliance, governance, etc., these days, the technology edge of a particular business that banks lend to are being literally mapped out to see which are the ones that are simply sticking to their traditional way of doing business and which are the ones that are a little ahead of the game. So it's important that the businesses raise the bar, raise their own standards to stay connected. Next slide, please. What are the connectivity synergies? I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time because this is what is going to be done through the morning. But a few things that came to me, especially came to my mind in terms of, Bill Gates once said, banks are going to become dinosaurs because technology will take over. That may not quite come to pass, not because banking per se has not transformed, but it has indeed, but because the banks are getting much smarter at it. In banks and financial institutions that I know, their technology department is their biggest department, even though in some banks at the board level, at the board of directors level, they say technology should result in X amount of saving in costs. Many of them are now starting to argue that technology will produce them so much of revenues, which is the flip side or the right side of technology investments. And so that's a very healthy tension. Is technology and connectivity, etc., going to cut down costs? Yes, it will in some instances, but will it also improve productivity? Will it also increase revenues, market share? I think there is good evidence to suggest that that's also the case. Within the UAE, within the Emirates, even the sector that was most affected during the recent financial crisis, or the not so recent financial crisis in 2008 to 2010, the real estate sector was the most significantly impacted adversely. And even within that, there are a few companies that have done exceptionally well in terms of staying connected, in terms of continuing to invest in their people, in their technology edge, and both in terms of internal processes and to make sure that their CRM and the like are state of the art. And I think it may not be directly correlated, but some of that helped them to stay alive. Not just stay alive, but alive and kicking. They were doing very well. They were going into other markets and quickly de-risking themselves. So even if a sector, for whatever reason, and we're all in different economic sectors that are subject to economic cycles, different business sectors that are subject to various ups and downs, inflation, deflation, cost escalation. But I think the smarter ones are the ones that use technology to meet some of those challenges. They stay connected. Interesting thing is within the UAE, there are some of the SMEs, and I know them, and I wouldn't want to give names because their own CEOs used to tell me that XYZ is not even an MNC or a global enterprise. He is very domestic, and he comes from whatever cultural background and so on, but they are giving us a run for our money. Our salesmen say that at every point in time they get pipped to the post by some of these SMEs that are very nimble, very quick, very agile, very and very connected. I think even those these are the smarter SMEs that have clearly not just won the admiration of their customers, but won the admiration of their competition, which is saying something. This again is more of a little bit of history to the extent that I know, which is a lot of the advancements, even in telcos, started with that Y2K syndrome and the fact that a huge number of software companies that were writing new codes sprung up around the world. And what they have done is, even though they have caused huge amount of disruption, healthy disruptions across the business world, what they've also done is made this almost like riding a tiger. You've got to keep staying connected, keep inventing yourself, reinventing yourself. And I think that's where this whole convergence of telcos, technology companies, businesses has produced phenomenal results. Much of this is, I'm not going to labor over it, but the objective, if the objective is to enhance sales performance, customer service, successful segmentation strategies, plus in terms of your P&L, more of P and less of hardly anything of L, hopefully, means that you do have to work through, make sure that your strategy is correct, your technology strategy is correct, your connectivity strategy is correct, agree it with the owners of the business, the professionals then step in and they execute. This would be quite familiar to all those that are running SME businesses or are connected to the SME businesses in one form or another. You have the constraints are significantly at the smaller level. I mentioned about the patriarch or the family, the person that started it all together, and many years back wants to remain in a control syndrome, and that doesn't help the growth of the business. It may help in terms of control. It may certainly help in terms of organizational discipline because he sets the tone, but certainly it doesn't help in terms of the growth opportunities, because unless you empower professional managers, be very difficult with them in terms of setting stretch KPIs, as Hazel mentioned, and provide them with as much access as they need to technology, as long as they can make out a strong business case or an investment case for them. Then I think the real growth will come from empowering them, and the best way to retain them is to reward them, measure, monitor, and then reward them. There are clearly inefficiencies that are external. Some of them are external in terms of poor infrastructure, but certainly infrastructure in terms of telco and technology connectivities should no longer be an issue in any part of the world, and certainly not in the UAE or in Dubai, where the government in a significant sense is ahead of businesses. The other day I was sitting and listening to what is likely to come in terms of the smart government, smart governance, smart government moves across each of the departments, government departments and service sector, public sector services. And they are streets ahead of anything that I've seen, even in some very large MNCs. And that is, creates this enabling environment that we have here for SMEs to flourish. What they make of it, how they leverage it, how they benefit from it, depends. That sorts out the men from the boys. The smarter ones will be taking advantage of the external enabling environment to move ahead in businesses. Of course, the others are the usual suspects in terms of very poor access to wider markets, regulations can be stifling, governance and compliance can be expensive, as it can be in some parts of the world. But essentially, it's a case of if you pay peanuts, you get monkey situation. So anything which is going to improve the quality of business, quality of governance, quality of operating efficiencies is an investment. Even though if you ask a typical accountant, he will want to treat it as a cost. And certainly in the case of investments in technology and devices and connectivity, there is a business case for having a very liberal depreciation policy, so that you don't spend an enormous amount of time with the accounting firm. That you manage the accountants, don't let the accountants manage you. If you do want to progress, you need to embrace state-of-the-art technology applications, connectivity. Otherwise, it's like the Japanese harakiri. I was looking at some of the traditional industries, manufacturing industries that started as SMEs, and interestingly, even in their own businesses, which generally doesn't lend itself, because it's you're stuck with the technology that you may have invested hugely when you started, and it costs an arm and a leg, or certainly some think so. The smarter ones have quickly adapted, so they've got segments of their businesses which are run according to the traditional path, and at the sales or the cutting edge businesses, the customer interface, they are absolutely up to date in terms of their connectivities, and that I think is a very interesting syndrome. So they're not changing for the sake of changing everything, especially if it stands them good, or if it holds them good, but they are able to invest selectively in some areas, which gives them that extra leap or extra edge. And I mentioned this earlier, but banks and financial institutions actually frown upon technology deficiencies. They may not share with you their own scoring mechanisms when it comes to SMEs, but internally, many of them give considerable weightage to how the business is being managed, how well the businesses are connected, how globally they are active in terms of adaptation of technology, and those score high marks. It's not necessary that they simply rely on your balance sheet or P&L or financial statements alone. And they give very poor marks if you're behind in terms of your digital connectivity and technology adaptation. This is again very quickly, how do you bridge the gap? On the left side, you have the technology right at the top. In terms of your infrastructure, capital, management, markets, the challenges that we spoke about earlier. And then you have access these days. You don't have to do everything yourself, or you don't have to recruit or retain a team. In terms of your opportunity to outsource or reach out to the high quality services that are available. And those are not just advisory services that helps you stabilize your financial position, and so you can focus on your core competencies or your core business objectives and not be bogged down by the need to do technology investments, evaluate it. So there's enough and more advice available, almost at fingertips. Again, it's all in an iPad or a device these days. And that is an amazing advantage that all of us are fortunate to have. And then, you can even outsource CTO services or skill development or upgradation for your core team or your specialist teams. And in terms of the financial infrastructure, a number of institutions have now been put in place. Even if you're a stressed, what the banks call stressed or non-performing company, there are asset reconstruction companies that are available in some parts of the world that helps you to move to the next step. You don't have to think in the US terms in terms of Chapter 7 or Chapter 11, but you certainly need a helping hand at the time when the chips are down, when you're in difficulties. So that constant refrain or complaint that banks give you an umbrella when it is not raining and then they snatch it away when it starts to pour. That is often mitigated by going to asset reconstruction companies. And I mentioned this to all the banker friends or colleagues, former colleagues that I meet with, to say that they need to be a little ahead of the game. There will be recessions in all economic cycles in the way, a capitalist or even a liberal economies are structured. You're bound to have the ups and downs, but it's the clever ones that are a little ahead in terms of planning and preparing themselves for those eventualities which are inevitable. So, in conclusion, huge benefits for SMEs. I don't have to reiterate this. That's the theme of this conference, and you will have wonderful speakers telling you a bit more on this going forward. What also makes it particularly relevant in this region is most of the governments have now recognized, and indeed you might have seen earlier this week the Minister for Economy announcing special financing packages for SMEs. Some of it is clearly and rightly focused on UAE national entrepreneurs, but every UAE national entrepreneur will need support in his business sense, and so that spawns or in turn creates opportunities for a number of SMEs. So I think the spin-off benefits are going to be huge, and this is almost is being made, the new SME packages through the UAE Central Bank, through the banking sector, as a matter of huge priority, national priority. It creates jobs, which is probably a motivation to do this on the scale that it is being done, or at the other level of incentivization that is being done. But it just creates a virtuous cycle. Banks and financial services are getting themselves up because once the government or the federal government announces that they are going to be a smart government, the pressure is enormous. I can tell you of a few CEOs that have told me specifically that they have been asked to shape up or ship out. It's and it comes right from the top of the tree. So that's the kind of pressure, and I think anyone who stays connected will always want to be a little ahead of everybody else. It's a constant self-improvement, realization approach. Stay focused in terms of your core business activities, your core competencies, whatever that will produce the kind of business results that you want to achieve, the kind of global connectivity that you want to achieve. But leave certain tasks, not have the control syndrome, leave certain tasks to the specialists, and that creates a bigger network and a bigger opportunity for you to grow your businesses. So, in conclusion, Paul, if I may, I'll thank you once again, and I think this is a tremendous opportunity and a tremendous theme. Quite happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Suresh. Please, huge round of applause.
Thank you.
Suresh, if I can just lead questions, if I may just be, as they say, devil's advocate for a second or two. In your new role as chairman of Values Group, how connected are you?
Good question. Personally, I think I'm pretty much there, even if I say it so myself. And the reason for that is I travel quite extensively. In fact, early this afternoon I'm off again. So that's why even my luggage is waiting outside to be loaded into the Emirates limo. So I do have to stay connected, otherwise I'll simply perish. And I think this applies not just to SMEs, it applies to professionals, it applies to every service sector. And so I try to stay as connected as I have, even though it puts enormous pressure, because to stay connected I also use a few key members of my team that are here, and I think I have a very interesting way of fending off pressures.
And I have to say, like I'm saying this in jest, because the reality is I don't think I've ever encountered anyone that replies to my emails with such comprehensive and lucid and quick replies as you do. That's the reality. So please, questions from the floor for Suresh Kumar.
Hi, I enjoyed your session a lot. You talked about traveling a lot. In this era of connectivity and digital era, why do you need to travel?
Very good question, very good question. Sometimes I ask that myself. I think two reasons. The real reason is I enjoy travel. And, my business travels are therefore, an excuse to do what I like best. But another reason is the whole world of connectivity has another personal aspect to it, which is you need to keep connecting with the minds of the people that you're going to be doing business with, in addition to every other use of technology and digital devices to get there. And I think that comes best, that chemistry is best established when you're face to face with the person. I mean, I do a number of video conferences. In fact, in more recent times, I have traveled because I have taken on more responsibilities at the board level. I chair companies, insurance companies, or financial institutions, or banks, or Emirates REIT in Dubai, the one that did an IPO recently. I chair their oversight board. So I'm able to take on more because I'm able to establish that level of chemistry, contribution to governance, etc., which is best done initially, at least, through travel. You can hold video conference board meetings, and we do, but it's always a lot better when you are looking at strategies that you establish that physical chemistry, you understand the other person's mind, which often gets disguised through devices. I hope that's a good excuse.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. I want to ask a question which is about connection, banking, and finance. It's extremely difficult for SMEs in this market, and although the downturn happened in 2008, we were still feeling repercussions right after 2012, and in fact last year as well. A lot of SMEs, now you can define SMEs as employing up to 50 people, you can define it by its turnover, you can define it by some institutional organizations will say it's a bigger number. Many of us have a problem, and I am an SME owner with staff, of actually financing, trying to find finance for the business for growth. If, say, let's say I wanted to spend $250,000 dirhams on updating our IT, a new server, etc., whatever, going to a local bank here is very, very difficult to get that finance as an expat SME owner, even though you show them financials, audit accounts, etc., whatever. Various institutions will offer you finance, if they do offer it, between 14 and 24% interest rate. 24% is financial suicide for any business. You will never get out of the debt. 14% is still very high. We need to start looking at interest rates at 2, 3, 4%. That's how you get in Europe, you get in the States, you get in the UK, whatever. Another alternative could be if the giants like Etisalat get together with the banks, if they can offer a turnkey service where they will supply equipment, supply service, supply the connectivity and devices and whatever is needed, the banks will bankroll that for a set term period, and then an SME owner then can actually budget then and then look at their cash flow and see then if it's a doable job. Have you guys ever thought of getting together in that way?
Excellent question and comment. I think there is no substitute for specializations in banking, and one of the specializations is SME banking is vastly different from taking care of the banking needs of Emirates Airlines or Etihad or Etisalat and the like. And I think that's being recognized. I mean, there is no one prototype of a successful banker who is not sensitive to the needs. Unfortunately, and I make no defense of the banks and the bankers themselves. They're also prisoners of procedures, processes, risk control, etc. And SMEs have been categorized as relatively high risk, and therefore high reward in terms of that 20% and 18% and 7%, etc. I mean, this is the thinking. I'm not defending it. I'm not suggesting that it is right, but that's the thinking. And that's where, even when I meet with Sultan Mansouri, the minister, or the central bank governor, I say this. I mean, it's all very well to say SME financing should be the focus area for the banks, but unless you give them some, the banks are measured, or more recently measured, in terms of the capital adequacy by the amount of risk capital they allocate. And so if SME is regarded as relatively higher risk than a corporate exposure or a corporate risk, or a mortgage loan, then you're going to have the kind of risk-based pricing that you mentioned, 40%, 20%, even when deposit interest rates are 1 or 2%, anything more than a reasonable margin over that is haram. It's serious. I mean, we are living in this part of the region where this should be a matter for the banks themselves to recognize that if they charge usurious rates of interest, they are in trouble. They may get the interest for some time, but they may not get the principal back, because if they collapse the business, as you said, they will not survive. Then they are just shooting themselves in the foot by charging interest. Maybe it helps the person who booked the loan to charge those kind of interest and show his own performance in terms of what he has achieved for the bank. He would have gone, or he would have got promoted and moved out, and the next man starts to deal with a problematic loan or a problematic issue. So I think what you're saying is unexceptional, but I think it's absolutely vital that the risks are controlled. And the way a smart banker would do that would be to see, it is true, especially an expatriate business person is viewed with less favor or more disfavor than a UAE national, because you have the ability to, pick up your bags, as I will do this afternoon, and go out of the country. So there's no hold, nor is particularly in this region, are the banks able to secure themselves, because ultimately they are in the trust business. They take deposits from customers and lend those deposits on to businesses. So they are in the business, a fiduciary business of taking money and giving it out, and so they have to protect both sides of their balance sheet. But there are ways of mitigating that risk, what we use the term mitigating the risk, i.e. reducing the risk, which is, yes, it's true that you can't register a charge here and enforce it in many parts, except perhaps in some of the free zones that run registries. The smart thing would be to anticipate what it takes for the bank to charge a lower rate of interest, and how do you secure their interests. Especially if you're also putting your money with the bank, you don't want the bank to lend unwisely. And I think that's best done in a dialogue, with your relationship person. And if he's not playing ball with you, then you go higher. and say that, look, I've got a business, I expect if with your support to take it to the next level, but your support would have to be in these ways, and I can comfort you or protect your risk in these ways. And that usually produces results. Otherwise, everybody is filling forms, everybody is going by the book, their book of rules and regulations. And so you always have this disconnect or poor response from the bankers, which makes the business suffer. So I think the other point that you made about Etisalat and the likes getting together, they are doing it. I mean, they're probably not doing it I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't speak for them any longer than when I was working with them, not for them. But they do have, I'm not sure about Etisalat, but some of them have created this framework by which they will provide the technology or the device or the connectivity, or they will sit with you and work your technology strategy and find ways of funding it. And then if they go and talk to the bank, the bankers will dance to their tune. So that's again a smart way, but I agree with you. I think these companies, for their own sales and for their own objectives of growing the business, needs to connect up with the banks and with the SME world. I think one way to get organized is for SMEs in a particular cluster or in a particular location to get together and deal with it. Usually that carries more weight than an individual SME or individual business person approaching it.
Suresh, thank you for a fantastic answer indeed. Please, huge round of applause for Suresh Kumar.
Thank you.